Hello and welcome to everybody watching on YouTube. My name is Surjo, and in this video we shall be talking about the Boss Katana 100 head. Now we've already been through the combo Boss Katana 100 and you can go and check out that video, but keeping the same features in mind, this thing does offer up a couple of surprises, and we will be focusing on the surprise elements of the head. And before we even get into all the features, we're going to talk about what the surprise is. The surprise is that this thing has an inbuilt speaker, and a very functional inbuilt speaker, something which responds rather well and is pretty loud despite the 5-inch size. Like, don't let the size fool you. In this case, it's going to be pretty loud. The way the setup for this is that my guitar is connected directly in to the head, and we have mic'd the head because we're not idiots, like I said, there's a speaker in the head. I know that there's a cab below, and we'll mic the cab below later for reference, just to see what it sounds like compared to when the head is there with the extra headroom and so on and so forth. But they have an inbuilt speaker for your practice purposes and so on and so forth, or for just checking out the tones without having to connect the cab and blasting your neighbors to bits. And so we're just going to get into what the amp does for those who are unfamiliar and go through all the functions. And this is the Boss Katana 100, the head. So first of all, it offers many amp types, and the amp types sound really good. A lot of amplifiers now, especially modeling amplifiers, they offer different amp types and so on and so forth. But what about whether it sounds good, whether it sounds authentic, and whether it is able to actually be a useful tool for a guitarist to improve? So this right here is able to do it all. This has a few amp types. The one amp type I'm not getting into right now is the acoustic amp type, simply because of the fact that I'm playing electric, but they do have an acoustic amp type as well, which does a wonderful job for simulating an acoustic amplifier, and is great when you connect your acoustic guitar. It's great for me also, obviously, because I have an acoustic album. But the first amp type they have is like a clean amp type. It's called clean. It basically is what I was just playing. It's like an old Fender sound, and we'll just go through the different amp types they have first, just try so that you get an idea for what the sounds are. So this is like an old Fender-ish sound. The next thing that they have is crunch. So as you can hear immediately, there is more distortion in the sound, there's more crunch in the sound. This is like the early 70s crunch that was being introduced into amplifiers, the first generation of distortion, you can say, that is being introduced into guitar amplifiers, and a lovely representation of that. And moving right along, we have the lead. So this is the sort of amp type which is like Marshalls. It emulates Marshalls, old Marshalls, jumped Marshalls, but with enough gain behind it. With enough gain behind it to where it covers from your 1968-69 Marshalls all the way till the 1980-88 Marshalls. It covers the whole gamut. So if you wanted, you can play Hendrix on this, but if you wanted, you could also play Yngwie Malmsteen on this. So that's pretty functional, and all in one amp type. You don't have to change amp types and so on and so forth. You can just do that on the one amp type. The gain knob, you can push it back, forth, and see. And there's a whole generation of guitar players and guitar sounds, because Marshall has been such an iconic sound for so long. So you'll definitely have that. And that's the brown amp type, which is based on the Boss Waza amp. And it obviously takes a lot of influences from the Van Halen modification that he did to the Marshalls, where he jumped the Marshalls for extra gain. He took the output of one and put it into the input of another, so that it would have all that extra gain coming in through. So you can see that it covers a wide variety of sounds just on the amp types itself, all the way from an acoustic all the way till the high gain Waza, and a lot of gain stages in middle, the clean sound, the crunch sound, the lead sound. There's so many distinctions between all the different amp types they have. So you can see it's a very versatile amp in terms of the sounds that it has to offer. Now, going along, it has a gain and a volume for the preamp section. It has a gain and a volume for the preamp section, so which basically means a gain for the amp type and the volume of the amp type. And moving right along that, you have the basic parametric it's like a graphic EQ rather, and it has bass, mid, and treble, and it also has a presence. So it has bass, mid, treble presence like every big time amplifier that you would expect in today's day and age. So it does have that. You can contour the sounds quite specifically to what you would like. Now, something really cool about the Katana series is that they have onboard effects. That is something which is really, really cool. That is something which a lot of amps have, but they don't have it in this way. They don't have it, the functionality is not the same, the ease of operation is not the same. So the Katana covers a lot of bases in this particular department. You can see it's just 3 knobs. They are there for your booster or your mod, your delay or your effects or your reverb, right? Now, turning on the effects is really simple. All you need to do is turn the knob on and you can see the light come on. It'll be a green light. If you press it once more, it'll be a red light, and if you press it once more, it'll be a yellow light. So that's basically all it is. All of them are same. And the green, red, and yellow, they signify different effects. And by different effects, I basically mean they are modeling the sound of different effect pedals, like distortion pedals in case of the boosters and mods, and different types of delays in case of the delays. But we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. Starting with just your booster and mod function. So this is the clean amp type, and this is what it sounds like. So now we turn on the booster switch. As you can see, I've just turned the knob clockwise and the thing turns on. The further you turn it clockwise all the way till 12, the more the mix of the booster is. One thing which I would like to say is all of these things, all these 3 effect chains that you have, they are all what you would effectively say was if you put them in like the FX loop. So basically they are after the preamp. They are not before the preamp. Normally, if you have your stomp boxes, especially for distortions and compressors, you have them at the front of the amp and you have them on your pedal board and you switch them on and they hit the front of the amp. This is not the front of the amp. This is going through the FX loop. This is after the preamp. So you should keep that in mind. So the sound, if you wonder like, oh, if that's a blues driver, when I hit my blues driver from the front, it sounds different. Yes, because you're hitting it from the front. This is not from the front of the preamp. It's after the preamp. It's in the FX loop. The whole thing is in the FX loop. It also has an FX loop at the back. So don't think that, oh, is this the only FX loop that you have? No. You have an FX loop at the back as well for you to be able to connect whatever you wish, so on and so forth. That whole situation is already there. They have a send and return functionality. So that obviously is there. Coming back to the sound. The extra distortion kick in. Now if you press the booster switch again, the color changes from green to red and it changes from a blues driver pedal to an overdrive pedal. As you can hear, there's a more mid-range boost and the gain is slightly tighter. And if you press it again, it becomes orange and that switches it to distortion. I think everybody knows what Boss and orange distortion stands for. If you're having a Boss product and they're signifying distortion with orange, that's a DS, something or the other, mostly a 1. So now we go on to the next part, which is the delays. Or rather, before we move on to the delays, let's go on to the modulation section. So like I said, the mix of the booster, which is your overdrive or your blues driver or distortion, that goes all the way till you switch it to 12 o'clock, and then post 12 o'clock when you move it, it becomes a mod function. So it could be a chorus, of course that's really exaggerated, but you get my drift. Press it once again, it becomes red and a flanger is introduced. Again, really exaggerated, but you get the drift. And that's a phaser. So the way the first dial works is from 0 to 12 o'clock, you know, the first half of the dial is your boosters and the second half of the dial is your modulation functions. You could hear that. As I pulled it back, you could hear the booster kick in. So now on the second dial, the first half of the dial is delays. First, they have a digital delay. So as you can see, it also has a tap tempo button by which you can change the tempo of the delay as you please, and you can change the mix of the delay by turning the knob clockwise or counterclockwise. So first they have a digital delay, which of course is as clean a recreation of the delay as possible. Is the most modern kind of delay that you have. So basically the sound of the delay is the delayed sound. There is no difference to the original sound. Then you have the analog delay. The recreation of the sound is not quite as faithful, as in the delayed sound is not exactly the same as the original sound, because the technology back then was not capable of reproducing it, but it's a very warm sound because the high end is rolled off. And next we go to tape echo, which is the original delay. If you can hear that, by the end of the delay, the sound completely changes itself because of the modulation that adds itself to the sound. So as you can hear, really sweet sound. Really sweet sound, really controlled, really well done. Now, if you go past 12 o'clock, you go on to the secondary part of this dial. The delay effect stops and they start with simply just effects, other effects. So the first one that they have is a tremolo. That's the first thing that they have. Moving right along, they have a wah. But as with any auto wah situation, which this is, you have to, if you want the most out of the wah, if you want the real frequency sweep to happen, you have to play hard. So keeping everything intact, if I play really like gently, so you can see the difference. The harder you strum, the more of the high frequencies come in. The sweep is higher. And taking it to the red. That's an octaver, as you can clearly hear. So that's what the FX part of it is. And then we move on to the third dial, which is basically the reverb. Keeping everything else off and just the reverb on. This is really lush sound, really full sound. And now we go into a spring reverb. The only thing with the spring reverb here is that if you play it too hard, it almost sounds like someone hit the springs in the amp, like someone shook the amp. It makes that sort of that crackling, I don't know what that sound is, but whatever, that sound. It sounds like someone has actually shook the amp. So that sound only happens when you turn the mix on the reverb too high, on the spring reverb. And finally you have the hall reverb. As with any hall reverb, it has way more low end than the other sorts of reverbs just because of what it's trying to emulate. So you can hear that, the really low boost coming in. So as you can see, it covers a wide range of sounds in terms of not only the amp types, where it can go from really clean acoustic to really distorted, and where you can, you can play even your very new genres of metal and so on and so forth. And then in terms of effects, it has different sorts of overdrive pedals, distortion pedals, reverbs, delays, modulation functions. It has a lot. Now keep in mind that if you were to connect this to Boss Tone Central, which is Boss's computer application, with that you can actually access any combination of the foot pedals and stomp boxes that Boss has to offer. So you can mix and match and do whatever you want, and it'll be more than the options that I just went through. It'll be way more. It'll be like 50 more options than what I just went through. So yeah, because you can USB connect this to your laptop or computer, and you can connect it to Boss Tone Central, and then you can make your whole set list, presets, everything. You can make everything out here. So moving on to the last part of the amp, they have a master volume, which is great. And in fact, the master volume is really important because the way they've designed this, they've almost promoted it like one tube amp characteristic, which is that the more you turn the master volume up, the richer it sounds. So there is some value to be had by turning the master volume up. Then of course that would mean that the whole thing would turn up really loud, but they do have an attenuator, a power attenuator, which can put you on standby in 0.5 watt mode, 50 watt mode, and 100 watt mode. So you can go through all that. Right now I'm running through 0.5 watt modes, and you can hear what it sounds like. So at the least amount of power possible without switching the power amp off, we're getting all of this. So I think that's very, very cool. Another thing, if you see on the back, they have channel 1, 2, 3, 4 and tone settings written over here. Yeah, you can save patches on this. You can save patches. You can like make a different sound setting and you can save it to channel 1, make a different sound setting, save it to channel 2, make a different sound setting, change it to channel 3. And if you're using a Boss foot switch, the GAFC foot switch, by that you can literally change through all the patches without having to tweak the amp sound if you want two different amp sounds. So they are even giving you the possibility of having patches on the amp. Normally you have patches on a processor. Who has patches on the amp? But there you go. They're letting you do all that. And if you connect the foot switch, you can turn the booster on, off, the reverbs, delays on, off, the whole 9 yards. The whole 9 yards. They let you do a whole lot if you connect the foot switch to it. So in effect, it not just becomes an amplifier, then it becomes an amplifier plus a processor, but not a processor in theory where you have all these effects, but you'll have to run to the amp and tweak the effects. No, they have it in real time. It could be on your foot and you can just, move with it whichever way you want. So those are the effects, those are the sounds. The next thing that we're going to do, because we've been running it through the inbuilt speaker so far, and we're doing this so that you understand that you can use this at home, practice rig, still get great sound out of it. It's quite loud. It is surprisingly loud for such a small, like it looks small, so you think like, oh, it's not going to be that loud. It's surprisingly loud. But just to give a good comparison, we are going to connect a cab to it. I mean, it has been on top of a cabinet so far, so it seems like a waste to not use the cabinet. And we're going to use the cabinet and we're going to hear what it sounds like and we're going to play some for you. And that's the way we're going to close out the video. We've connected the Boss Katana head to a 4x12 cabinet. And I was just playing around with it before I actually start doing this. Yeah, this thing is going to be a monster once you connect it to your external cab. The sound is just tremendous. The headroom, the clearance, the clarity is just fantastic. So I'll just go through all the sounds that we have. I've put in a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay, and I'll just go through all the amp types and what it has to offer, and we'll see what happens. So that's what the Katana 100, Boss Katana 100 head sounds like through a 4x12 cabinet. I shall take a few minutes to recover my ears. But in the meantime, I should tell you, this is a lightweight, easy option. You can connect this to any cabinet which is above 8 ohms, which any 2x12, 4x12 is basically. And basically the low end that it conveys, what I'm hearing right now, right? I mean, that's just the truth. That's as good to the low end that a tube amplifier has to offer. That is the best thing that I can say about this whole thing. Is the fact that the sound is so close to what everybody aspires for. Solid state technology is coming along in leaps and bounds. And you don't have to lug a cab. You can just take the head. You can practice with the head at home because it's good enough. That's what the first part of the video was about. And then you can take the head to your gig. And you can connect it to any cab. And you can watch this, just burn the room, basically. So that's what it's about. With all these effects and everything, and the extra functionality that you can have with an FX send and return and connecting the foot switch, there's so much that it has. It has auxiliary ins, it has recording outs. You can record straight out from this. You can have line outs, headphone outs. It has everything you want. Everything that the modern guitar player wants in terms of the convenience yet quality. It is all here. This is the complete and total package. It is also a wonderful option simply, again, because of how convenient it is. You don't have to lug around a cab or keep a cab at home. You can just, work with the sounds at home with just the head. And then you can, go to your gig and have a cab there instead of taking a cab from home and lugging it all the way. It just becomes like an easier option is what I'm trying to get across here. I think it's wonderful. Wonderful product, wonderful features. It's well made, rugged construction, good sleek look. It's got everything you're basically looking for. This is an amazing product. Boss are really hitting it out of the park with the Katana series. I've done the combo that hit it out of the park, and the head right now just spectacular. So that was my review for the Boss Katana 100 head. I hope you guys enjoyed it and it was useful for you. Until next time, take care.